Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sip&Awe, where God puts the awe in awesome, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Man, Wisdom Wednesday is probably one of my favorite days of the week. Why? Because I get to spend it with you, and we get to hear so many amazing things. So much wisdom is going to be poured into your life today. I have my buddy Kyle here, and this is probably one of the most, I almost said the most wisdomist, but that's not even a word, okay? The most wisdom that I've ever received, honestly, on this podcast. In the moment, I was like, this guy's so smart. As I'm talking to him, he is way smarter than me. He is up here, Kyle's up here, and I'm down here. And so that kind of made the conversation slightly intimidating in my own mind, and it was just simply my mindset. And what's kind of cool, we actually talk about mindset. We talk about negative thinking and having a mentor and why that's important. And I just want to quickly read Kyle's bio. Sorry, I forgot the word. Kyle, I think it's Gillette, like the razor brand. If it's not Kyle, I apologize. Kyle Gillette is a business and leadership coach who helps business owners transform from feeling like they are on an island in a state of SOS, stressed out, overwhelmed, and stuck, to having more courage, confidence, and freedom than ever. One of my favorite type of conversations is it leaves you thinking after. Right. So whenever you kind of leave a conversation and you're still pondering on what the individual said, I can tell you for sure that after my conversation with Kyle, I was thinking for sure. I was really kind of dissecting what he was saying because there's just so much stuff that we talked about in the span of about 30-ish minutes. And so, guys, enough about me. Let's get in there and meet my buddy Kyle. All right, Kyle, welcome to Sip&Awe. How are you doing, my man?
I'm great. How you do, Brandon?
Man, I'm doing good. Come on now. So I was looking on your Podmatch profile, and you do a lot of leadership and mentorship. Why have you what kind of made you passionate about that?
Yeah, I was in college and I was lost and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I had a makeshift desk. I made it out of 2x4s and a big sheet of plywood. So I had this sweet, huge desk. I remember
Cool.
sitting at the desk talking to my parents on the phone,
Okay.
looking at remember those CRT monitors, those Dell monitors?
Yeah.
Huge, so I was talking to my parents about where I was, and at that time, I was 30 pounds overweight. I'd gone off trail on a hike with some friends, and so I was covered in poison oak.
Oh my gosh.
I was several units behind in college and really afraid to become an adult
Yeah.
because it was my senior year and it was time to become an adult.
Yeah.
So I got a phone call a couple weeks after that. My parents tried to comfort me or whatever, but got a phone call from a guy I'd gone to India with, and he
Cool.
said, "Hey, there's this job opening at this men's mentoring program." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." So he told me about it, and I went and interviewed at the program. And after an hour and a half of interviewing, the president and the director said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you the job," which meant I would be moving out of the apartment with one of basically my best friend, and then a couple other guys, and moving into this house with these guys that are 18, 25 that are off track and lost in life.
Wow.
That's me. I'm that guy.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I was the dude that was lost and off track in life. So I move in and I'm supposed to lead them. And so I really had to step up and change my attitudes and adjust things. So I lost the weight, ran a half marathon, started to lead these guys, and it ended up being a 9.5 year journey of
Wow.
being a part of that program in various capacities. So that
Yeah.
carried forward to what I'm doing now.
Cool. Yeah. So how did you essentially lead individuals that you were, I guess, in the same ballpark as them?
Yeah, I had a really good mentor.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
the program director, actually the program president was my mentor, and I got to bounce ideas off of him. And I also had a co-house leader that I got to bounce ideas off of as well. And so I kind of got to mastermind my way through the process. And then I just didn't have any other options.
Cool.
When you have that point where you don't have any other options, you end up stepping up,
Yeah.
and what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. So I had to reinvent myself
Yeah.
essentially. So I did that in that first year, and then I continued to be a part of the program in various roles, but the intensity of it was a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to change your life, if you want to change the way your character What is the best? Where's the best place to start?
I'm tapping my head for people that can't see me. It's your mindset. You got to start there. There's
Totally.
a there's four requisites for change. And so, Brandon, I want to get you to guess. What do you think are a couple of those requisites for change?
Hmm. Well, so you said thinking, right? Okay. Your habits,
Okay.
the your environment,
Okay.
your the people you hang out with,
Sure.
and I'm gonna go be spiritual, like your belief system or what you believe in when it comes to your spirituality.
Cool. Okay. So those are all kind of the fruit of the change, right? So
Cool.
they're
Yeah.
kind of the context in which the change can happen and also the fruit of it. So the fundamentals are release is the first step. So I'll
Okay.
keep this brief, but I love this stuff, so I'll try to do my best to keep it brief. If you picture you know how they have all those AI creations out there, those AI images out there now
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
create
Yeah.
this funky stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, picture an AI creation of someone's brain and body being drugged down by baggage,
Okay.
literally luggage, just
Yeah.
holding people back, strapped across their chest, on their forehead, just holding you back.
Yeah.
In order to change, we have to let go of all that baggage. That baggage is represented by our limiting beliefs, our negative emotions, and our often misaligned values.
Mm.
When you get those things let go of and you recognize what is going on within yourself with those things, you can release the baggage, which then allows you to move forward in whatever thing you're trying to do.
Okay.
Once you've done that, you can, excuse me, once you've released, you can now create. So you can
Cool.
create from a place of freedom
Cool.
because now you're not being weighed down anymore. It's like trying to float up in a hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got all the baggage in the way. Then you can
Right.
focus, or then you can intentionally act, which is the third part, and then finally you can stay focused because the all that limiting stuff isn't holding you back anymore. So you get to stay focused. You don't get distracted. You don't get demotivated
Yeah.
because of those things.
Yeah. Let's talk about release. How do you fully release something? Because I feel like maybe some people can just say, "Oh yeah, I'm over that," but in your core, you're not really over it, or you haven't really released it. So, what are some practical, fundamental things that we can do to actually truly release something?
Yeah, you have to disassociate. So disassociation is where you're watching yourself in a movie, is the simplest way to put it. So let's say give me something that you're dealing with right now. It could be big or small, doesn't whatever you want to mention. What's
Okay.
something you're dealing with?
Probably negative thoughts or
Okay.
yeah, not feeling confident in what I'm doing.
Okay, so if who's a friend of yours?
Danny,
Okay,
my
so if
friend
Danny
Danny.
told you that, said, "Hey, Brandon, I'm struggling with some negative thoughts and I'm not very confident about specific things," right? He tells you these details. Would you have some sort of insight to share with him?
Probably, yeah.
So this is what we have to do. Essentially, your problem has now become Danny's problem. So now you're disassociated from it. And
Okay.
so you get to see the problem from a different angle, a different perspective,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
then allows your brain to let it go and
Wow.
resolve it. So
Cool.
we can do that by thinking about it in that way. What if someone else had this problem? If my best friend has this problem, what advice would I give him? And then you think about it and it allows you to separate from it. Another
Very
way to
cool.
do it is to journal. You
Yeah.
can write down the problem, excuse me, and then come back to it a day or two later and look at it again.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you're disassociated from the problem. You're not so emotionally invested
Mhm.
in it, and you can see it from a new angle.
Yeah.
Those are very practical ways. I have a whole process I walk my clients through that's way more technical and
Yeah.
much more engaging of the unconscious mind. But that process that I just shared definitely works.
Yeah. Very cool. What do you think is the biggest issue that you've seen in your field that a lot of people struggle with?
Well, very practically, it's getting leads so they can make sales, so they can grow their
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
The re I think a lot of the reason that people struggle with that is they don't have good systems in place. So very
Mhm.
practically speaking, it's systems that people don't track and record the things that they're doing that works and the things that they're doing that don't work. They don't have a
Mhm.
good system in place, not good lead measures and lag measures. in terms of the mindset, it's more of the imposter. I don't feel like I can ask this person if I can work with them, or I can't pick up the phone and make this call because I'm not qualified
Hmm.
for whatever false beliefs the person has about themselves.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say no, or they
Right.
might criticize you a little bit, but you're going to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no failure. It's just feedback. So that's
Right.
actually a good thing ultimately.
Yeah. Do you think there's such thing as good feedback and bad feedback, or just feedback is feedback?
I, Feedback is feedback, yes, but some people are really crappy at it.
Totally.
some,
Yeah.
some people that you have to work hard to learn something from the feedback, where others they give you critical feedback, and the message alone, what they said was the lesson, and it was great. You got the lesson just from what they said. Other people, you got to use a little bit more brain calories to
Yeah,
figure it
for sure. Why do you have any thought on why people may be reluctant to hear criticism, either good or bad? Do you think it's because they're insecure and they don't really want anyone to kind of give them advice on something? For example, people will give me feedback on my podcast, and I'm pretty open to all of it. And so I kind of have this thought of like, if I have a wall or a boundary set up, that means that I'm insecure. I don't want people giving me feedback. What do you think?
I think there is some insecurity there. I think that we all kind of carry this, especially men. I can't speak for women because I'm not a woman, but like
Yeah.
men have this fragility to them that they're afraid to admit.
Yeah.
We spend so much time by ourselves doing our own thing on our own islands, isolated and a bit alone, and we're in our own thoughts. We don't spend a lot of time expressing what we think about something to other people,
Hmm.
especially the deeper things. Just an opinion about something is one thing, but the deeper things about who I am or what I believe in,
Yeah.
hard for a lot of guys to share. So when you do and you get that feedback and it's negative, that's a little bit hard to take. And especially if some of the root times that you did that, where you actually got vulnerable around other people and you shared what you really thought,
Yeah.
some sort of a weakness you have, or some sort of something about you that you don't really like, but you
Yeah.
want to share with people about it. And then you get beat up for it, like not literally, or maybe literally, but you just get kind of razzed by
Yeah.
it a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit by other people. That's going to hold you back
For
from
sure.
speaking up again. So
Yeah.
I think that's that limiting beliefs, right? That's those
Yeah.
negative emotions that haven't been let go of, so that prevents the person from being genuine, from being real and opening up.
Yeah, for sure. So on a standpoint of being a man, I would consider myself a little bit more sensitive because I don't know, I with my emotions I cry a little bit easier. Things kind of get to me quicker. Do you think men should be a little bit more tough and not so sensitive, or do you think men should kind of rise up to? I'm not saying like crumble with their emotions, but they should have the freedom to open up and be vulnerable, or should they just be a man about it, get over it, and just move on?
Do you know the term meekness?
Yes.
So I had a client that he said this, and I thought it was really powerful. He said meekness is strength under control.
Mm,
And I think that's great. You hear stuff from like Jocko Willenick or Jordan Peterson and various other guys out there that are talking about how it's better to be, what do they say? It's better to be a warrior in a garden
yeah.
than like a gardener in a war,
Or
or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
And I get it. I agree
It's
with that.
cool. Very cool.
But that understanding of your own emotions, emotional intelligence is strength,
Hmm.
right? My business is called Blue Shirt Coaching. And the B in blue stands for be a self-aware leader, which is ultimately emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So the more emotionally intelligent you are or I am, the more in tune we are with our emotions, and the more we are at peace with whatever those emotions are, the more we are a warrior and more strength we truly actually have.
Yeah.
And then if you're really in tune with yourself, you can also control that strength in really beautiful ways. I mean, I have three daughters, so I got to really control my strength
Yeah.
with them
For
because they're
sure.
younger and they're weak in comparison to me. So I have to be
Yeah.
careful
For
with
sure.
my voice, my physicalness, all that stuff.
Yeah. How can we um not allow our emotions to run over, or I guess when people are sensitive or when they hear a bad critical thought, they just stay there in that pocket. They stay in that hole. Like how can we avoid that or kind of train our mind to take criticism and not stay in that hole?
I think you have to be really at peace at with who you are
Hmm.
and know who you are and be okay with where you stand so that when you get that feedback, when you get that ego hit,
Hmm.
that you learn from it
Yeah.
instead of fighting against it.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife today and oh, that's right. She came this morning. She came into the bedroom and she was getting dressed. And I stayed in bed later because I'm a little sick. And so I was super tired. And she came in, got dressed. And then I said, good morning. And I said, how are you? Something like that. But I kind of grumbled it. I went, "Oh, yeah," like that because I was just tired and my voice sounded funny and all that. And she didn't hear me. But I went through this little story in my head. And the story was first, it was quickly, well, she just ignored me. She's irritated at me because I'm still in bed. And then I went to the next story in my head, to the little Rolodex of stories. And I
Yeah.
said, no, she probably didn't hear me because I kind of mumbled it.
Yeah.
And I stuck with that story because it's the better story. Because if I stuck with the first one, that's going to create frustration for me
Yeah.
with my wife.
For sure.
So, to answer your question, it's really important that we tell ourselves the right stories. Assume the most positive thing we can about what's being shared with us,
Yeah.
even if the way it's being shared sucks. Because people aren't sometimes very good at sharing their perspective on something, especially
Yeah.
if it's critical and the emotions are high. So, what is the story you're telling yourself about that person? Because that is going to then interpret how you experience that conversation and even how you experience that person going forward for at least a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. So how do you bounce back from you tell yourself maybe my wife didn't hear me, but then you address her, but she was actually upset because you were still in bed. So like you assume the wrong story. How do you handle that from there?
yeah, well, I mean, you get rid of your ego.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I'm tired. I didn't sleep very well last night, but please forgive me for being grumpy. Please forgive me for not understanding that you're frustrated with me.
Yeah.
Right. There's a I got some training from this guy named Dr. Matt James, and he trains on NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming.
Okay.
And one of his things that he does with his team and with his family is it's a Hawaiian culture thing. And they don't say I'm sorry. I didn't know this. It's not a
Uh-huh.
thing they say. Instead, they say forgive me. Please forgive me. There's no term in Hawaiian, no word in Hawaiian for I'm sorry.
Wow.
There's only please forgive me or forgive me. And
Yeah.
so he uses that language when he says something, he like stumbles when he's speaking or he does something wrong, he'll ask the person, please forgive me, and then move forward because there's a much better exchange of energy and intention when you say that. Sorries are cheap, but to truly ask
Wow.
for forgiveness is a different thing, right?
Yeah.
So ask for forgiveness and mean it is very different than say, I'm sorry that you didn't hear me right.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's still casting it on that person instead of please forgive me that I didn't understand you correctly or
Right.
understand your frustration. It's
Yeah.
a very different experience between the two parties.
Yeah, for sure. That's very cool. I'm just assuming this. I feel like you handle conflict well with your spouse. Is that pretty accurate, or you still struggle with some things?
We have our moments, but I
Yeah.
remember this was at our old house. We moved 3 years ago, but we had an ice machine
Okay.
and I was putting the cup into the ice machine, hitting the thing. Ice was coming in, and she walked behind me, and she said something about that she was irritated with me about something. I have no idea what it was, right? Because the irritation isn't the point.
Yeah.
And so the ice is in the cup. I turn, and she tells me, and in my head, I go, I want to flip out. Like I want to be like, this is ridiculous that you would say that to me. Like, why would you? That pisses me off. Don't you even understand? That kind of crap that people do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's this little switch that flipped, and I remember it because I was doing the ice. She said the thing, and then I turned to her and I said I appreciated the way that she did it, the
Uh-huh.
way that she approached me. It was critical. My wife's very critical, and what I mean by that is in the personality assessment world, there's something called the DISC assessment,
Hmm.
and the C in DISC stands for conscientious. And the
Okay.
conscientious types are very exacting. They're experts. They're highly logical. They're procedural in nature, and they're critical.
Okay.
That's my wife to a T.
Yeah.
So I used to take it as a personal affront when she is just being her personality,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful personality. So when I recognize that in that moment, that this is just my wife being her personality and she's just sharing her perspective on something, it pivoted my thinking. It was literally the switch that changed, not literally, but you get it. It was the
Yeah. Yeah.
switch that
Yeah.
changed in my thinking.
For
And then
sure.
that's paid forward. So the way that I get to choose how I perceive you and you get to choose how you perceive me, excuse me.
Right. Yeah.
And when I make that choice ahead of time about how I'm going to perceive you, that I'm going to have a good experience on this podcast, my brain takes the 2 million bits of information that falls around it, that happens around it every second, and chooses 126 of them that proves me to be right, that this is
Yeah.
going to be a good experience.
Yeah.
I can go the other way and go, I'm going to get on the show and Brandon's going to be a crappy host. The audio's going to suck, whatever. I'm going to come up with all kinds of things that I'm going to be observing that my
Yeah.
brain will find. My brain could find things about the way that you're asking questions or the audio or the video that I can interpret as not good.
Yeah.
So setting my intention up front of what I want to observe about the person or the situation is going to help me to massage that ego away and to be able to deal with the crappy criticism or the not well placed criticism
Yeah.
much more readily and much more maturely.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the red car theory? I think that's what it's called.
I have not.
Yeah. So basically, it's essentially looking for opportunities. So it's like,
Mm,
um, when you, yeah. So
yes.
it's like if you looked around the room, uh, look for things that are brown. Okay. And then it's like, okay. So what are things are red? I don't know. Okay. Now do it again. Look for the things that are red. Okay. And then it's like, why was it easier to find the things that were red? Because you were looking for it. And so that
Yep.
that kind of reminds me of uh I'm gonna have a great experience because I'm actually looking for those things rather than this podcast is gonna suck. And it's like, that's why it sucks, because this audio sucks or whatever. That's really cool to just change your mindset of um what you're focusing on. And can you kind of speak on, I guess, what someone can do whenever they have an expectation of something's going to be great and then it starts to suck, on how we can kind of pivot our perspective to making a moment that's not that great into something that's really good?
Yeah. So, first of all, your audio doesn't suck.
Praise God. Yes. Thank you.
But, when I was in college, I'd go to parties and I'd have a great time. And then I would talk to people that didn't go because they were doing something else or whatever. And they'd ask me if I had a good time.
Yeah.
A- And I would tell them yes. And then eventually somebody asked me that. And I said, of course I had a good time. It's up to me if I'm going
Yeah.
to have a good time or not. It's my
Right.
choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if I start to have a bad time, unless there's circumstances where like I'm getting hurt, you
Yeah.
know, or there's really negative circumstances, which is not really what you're talking about. We're not talking about those. We're just talking about attitudes, really.
Yeah.
It's still up to me, even if the party does technically kind of suck or the situation does technically kind of suck.
Yeah.
There's still an opportunity to learn. There's an opportunity to change the context for myself, which
Yeah.
ultimately I can also change the context for other people with just my attitude, my approach.
Yeah.
I mean, and this I don't know if we want to go down this path, but when I'm working with my clients, I teach them this so that their employees can perform better
Right.
because it's their attitude as the leader sets the tone. I'll give you a at home example. This was probably 3 weeks ago now. I was grumpy. It's like 7 in the morning, and I was making breakfast for the kids. My wife was doing stuff with the kids as well, and I was grumpy about something. I don't know what it was. It wasn't anything anybody had done. I just was grumpy. I was in that PMS stage, pissed off man stage.
That's awesome.
I was in PMS, right?
Yeah.
So my youngest comes in and I made some sort of a comment to her that she's 7, some sort of a comment that was my tone was the issue.
Hmm.
I said something like, "Can you get the forks?" Something like that. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't sound that big a deal, but she picked up on it because she's super in tune. All kids are super in tune to tone of voice, right? They're really good at that.
Yeah.
She caught it, and then she instantly snapped at her middle kiddo. And so then my middle kiddo started going back at her. And then my oldest walked downstairs as this is happening. And then my oldest grabbed the vibe and was like being a jerk to me instantly. And in that moment, I went, that's all my fault. This is all my fault because I didn't have the
Wow.
right tone of voice.
Wow.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but it just made me think of that story.
No, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know if you like have any experience with this, but a big thing that I struggle with is being nervous. So I talk in front of crowds a lot. Do you have any input on how to not be so nervous or why people are nervous?
Yeah. So there's a technique that I use with my clients to basically get rid of this.
Okay,
And I'll teach it right now, and you'll need to do it repeatedly. But when I do it with someone in the context of a coaching relationship, we permanently take care of it.
cool.
So basically, anxiety is putting emotions in the future, and you can't
Mm,
have emotions in the future. It's not possible. We can only have emotions in the present.
yeah.
So as you're thinking about when is your next time you get to speak in front of people?
Tomorrow evening.
Okay, so tomorrow evening, what's the crowd size?
I like 20-ish people.
Cool, good for you.
Yep.
Okay, 20 people. And do you know your subject matter?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're in front of 20 people. And so whatever's going on in your head, you're thinking about that context and there's some sort of anxiety or nervousness about it. That's fine,
Yeah.
right? One thing to note before I go any further, the difference between anxiety and excitement is very, very subtle. So the chemical things that are going on in our brain, what gets lit up in our brain is very subtle in difference between anxiety and excitement.
Okay.
So if we just pivot and go, you know what? Actually, this isn't anxiety. This is excitement. I'm excited to speak in front of these 20 people. I know my subject matter. I'm going to
Yeah.
knock it out of the park, right? So now you can pivot in that direction.
Yeah.
But the very practical thing you can do is you picture what it's like 15 minutes after you've successfully completed that speech. Okay, so you picture whatever that looks like for yourself. Maybe you're talking to some people that have some questions for you. They're really excited about what you shared.
Yeah.
And you picture that success. So that's for yourself. Second is I'm watching this series by a guy named Bruce Wilkinson, and he's phenomenal teacher, and he's teaching on how to be a great communicator. It's such a
Cool.
good series.
Cool.
And he talks about that the teacher, or in your case, the speaker, is the one that's responsible for the student to learn. So it's
Mhm.
your responsibility for the student to learn or the listener to learn, not
Yeah.
theirs, but it's also theirs. But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's your responsibility for them to learn. And so
Hmm.
you get the privilege of figuring out how to help them learn. And when you're done in your mind, you think about your future and you go, wow, I got to teach them. I did a great job of teaching them. And this is what I feel like after having successfully done that. And this is what they look like after having successfully learned from me.
Cool.
So you create that mental picture as clearly as possible in your mind and you imagine it several times. And then the anxiety and the worry fades away. And then you can pivot it to excitement instead.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And you can do that with any sort of situation we're anxious about.
Yeah. That is awesome. Man, I wish I had that knowledge before my wedding because I was super anxious.
So was I.
Yeah, man. Oh my gosh. What's funny is I don't really remember a lot from my wedding because I was in such a like anxious days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember as my wife walked, it was an outside wedding. And as she walked through the chairs, or my fiance, obviously at the time,
Yeah.
she's walking up and I remember like my lip and I couldn't like my mouth was acting super weird. I couldn't control it. And I felt like, oh, I just felt like man, it was awkward, but it was wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, I felt awkward walking down the aisle with my mom. It's like, do I look at everyone? Do I just look at the minister? What do I do with my face? I don't really know. Anyways, yeah. So
Well,
go ahead.
let me jump in real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this ties into the speaking. I really like to publicly speak. So 2.5 years ago, I had a hard time sharing 30 seconds about my business on an online conversation.
Okay.
I would get cold, clammy hands. I would be like chest palpitating because I had to share for 30 seconds about what my business is.
Hmm.
It was awful. Then I went, you know what? I'm going to learn. So I did Toastmasters. I'm still doing that. I've studied it. I've learned it. I've put myself out there a ton.
Hmm.
where was I going with this? You mentioned you mentioned the your wife, you mentioned being nervous about it.
Yeah,
Um
like walking down the aisle with my mom in
yeah,
a
oh yeah,
group or
that's
whatever.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
When we get to a place where we're not thinking about ourselves and we're thinking about our audience, the nervousness and the anxiousness, it goes away. It becomes kind of fun.
Yeah.
I spoke at a HR presentation, and it was like 75 people, and I was standing up there and I knew what I was going to say. So I had my spiel down. Like, I had 30 minutes to talk, and I was fine. I had that down. I know my stuff, just like you know your stuff. And so I stood up there, and as I'm talking, it wasn't autopilot, but it was just coming out easily.
Yeah.
I was able to control where I put myself in the room. I was
Yeah.
able to give people certain eye contact and like tune in to someone that seems to be really paying attention to me. So I was reading the room, and it was so nice because I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking about them, which is what I need to be doing anyway. And
Yeah.
that pays forward in any relationship.
Yeah.
If we're truly listening to someone or we're truly trying to communicate with them, even if we're the one talking, we need to be paying attention to their body language and their attitude
Yeah.
about it.
For sure.
So,
Yeah, that's really cool that you say that because I am an individual who loves, I like one-on-one conversation rather than group settings. I'm not that guy. And so what's cool, I saw this video and he was basically saying that use that to your advantage. So rather than focusing on the whole group, when you're talking, focus on one individual that you're specifically talking to because you are a one-on-one person. So when you're looking at a crowd, someone who is really into what you're saying, focus on them and kind of finish your point with them or really focus on them as you're talking. And once I heard that, that really set me free from just feeling like this anxiousness. Um, and I forgot, I think it's called the spotlight theory. I forgot what it's called, but basically he was saying the best way to get rid of nervousness when you're in front of people is to put the spotlight on someone. Like because when you have anxiety, you're focusing on yourself. But when you're
right.
focusing on this person's in the room, they're really cool. Let me ask them a bunch of questions or um, something along those lines. All the anxiety goes away because you're focusing on that very person.
Yep. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And so
Totally
it's
true.
it really really helped. So as we only have like 8 minutes left, Kyle, but talk about your business. Is there any resources we can reach out to, or if someone is interested, talk about your business a little bit.
Yeah, I have a blog, I have a podcast, I have all those things.
Cool.
I want to encourage people to check out my courses. I have a course on SMART goals, productivity, balance, all kinds of different content that's super helpful for people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just visit blueshirtcoaching.com. And I think I already have a coupon code, so I can share a coupon code for people to get free access to the SMART course.
Right on.
Uh,
Cool.
Normally it's $97, and if they're listeners of your show, they can get it for free.
Very cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Um, I guess what kind of like sparked I think this maybe can loop back to my very first question, but what kind of sparked the desire to have this kind of business and do courses along these lines?
Yeah, so when I was in that men's mentoring program, I saw that mentoring and coaching was something that I really enjoyed and I was good at. And people were very much touched. Those guys' lives were very much touched by
Yeah,
our interactions. And when I left the program to come up to the Pacific Northwest, be with my wife's family and just move up here,
yeah,
I wanted that kind of an impact in the business world because
cool.
I thought that, you know what, the business world is probably where the largest impact I can have on people as relates to them shifting their lives, them changing perspectives, and them becoming a better version of themselves.
Yeah,
So I floundered around in a couple different jobs and I tried to open a couple different businesses. They didn't work. And then I stumbled into an HR job and I enjoyed that. And then I got introduced to coaching in that job. And I went, oh, okay, this is
cool,
it. So I
cool.
started my business at that point. And I've always thought that business owners are like the most influential people in the world,
Yeah,
especially in this country, because not only do they have influence in terms of like social media and financial influence, but they have teams. And if you lead a team of three people, two people, one person, how you lead that person impacts them, which impacts their family.
mhm,
So if you have a team of 100 people, for example, and you're impacting that team with your attitude, your approach, your mindsets, how you're stuck on things or not stuck anymore, that pays forward into everyone else that you're leading. And this is when you're talking a team of 100, we're talking thousands of people's lives impacted because the person I'm coaching has changed their perspective on things, has a better
Yeah,
attitude, is
for sure.
empowering people for real.
Yeah.
That's life changing. And so for me, I went, yeah, I'm all about that. So I dove in.
Very cool. Why should people have a mentor?
A mentor?
Yeah, why should people have one?
Because I don't have it figured out, and neither do you.
Yeah.
We
That's
don't
probably
have
my
it figured
favorite
out.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, the mentors are wonderful. I've had mentors since I was, well, my dad, and then after that, I've always had a mentor. I've sought them out, been very purposeful, seeking out mentors and coaches. And I have two mentors right now. And one of them is very niched and specific on a very specific topic, and the other one is more broad life and business.
Yeah.
And we meet at a coffee shop every other Tuesday.
Cool.
And I was complaining flat out. I was complaining about the pace in which things are happening in my business. And then I was beating myself up as well. And he looked at me. I think he put his hand on my hand, I think is what he did, if I remember correctly. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "Stop it. Stop it." And then I'm like, "What?" And he
Yeah.
tells me again, and now I get it, right? He's just, stop the complaining, stop the moaning, stop the whining. And then he flipped it around on me, and he started talking about the impact that I have made, and like that this great guy, and that he sees value in me, all these things that were super encouraging. You
Yeah.
don't get that necessarily from just any friendship.
For sure. Yeah.
Mentors are intentional and purposeful. Friends can be, but it's not as often. And we need
Right.
that. No matter
Yeah.
who you are, we need that. So definitely having a mentor.
Absolutely. I mean, you just need someone to kind of get in the weeds of your life. It's like, bro, you got to fix this. It's like
Yes.
the way you handle that was not the best. I mean, and who doesn't want that? Like, I mean, someone who doesn't want that is just prideful and think they're the best thing that's ever happened. But it's like, like that, your answer, I asked some guy a few weeks back, why should we have a mentor? He said the same exact thing. He's like, well, let me ask you this. Do you have it all figured out? And it's like, no, I don't have it all figured out. And that's why having a mentor, that's why having someone looking in from the outside is so important. And if you're so prideful that you don't think a mentor, like it's just that's kind of a sad way to live. You know what I mean?
Well, and going all the way back to the thing that I was talking about with release, it allows you to separate yourself from your problem because they see it from a new angle, which
Yeah,
is really what release is.
that's
It gives
cool.
you it gives you what it releases is about allowing your brain to see the problem in front of it. Okay, what does that mean? It means it's allowing your brain to see the emotions of things in the future.
Yeah,
Which earlier I said, if people remember, I said you can't have emotions in the future because you can't. It's not possible. You can only have emotions in the present.
right.
So my mentor or myself, or when I'm working with my clients, I help them put that experience, the emotions, the limiting beliefs in the future unconsciously. It'll take too long to explain. But anyway, I
Yeah,
help them put that in the future, which then their brain has to let go of the emotions of it and
yeah,
learn the lesson. So you keep the lesson, but you let go of the emotions and you let go of the limiting beliefs, and that equals freedom. And
yeah.
that is beautiful.
That is so good. Man, that is a great place to end. Kyle, I'm just so thankful for this conversation. You're so wise. Like I can just tell you really know what you're talking about. And so I would love to have you on the show again. But thank you so much for this amazing time. I've learned so much, and I'm going to keep this video. And every time before I speak, I'm going to watch this little section on what I should do to prepare before I speak. But Kyle, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I'll keep in touch and we'll do this again soon. Okay.
Perfect. Sounds
All
good.
right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Man, that was such a good episode. He puts the whiz in wisdom. I don't really know what that means, but he does. He puts the whiz in wisdom. And I forgot to do Sip&Awe. I'm sorry. So we can quickly do it. I do not have my beverage because it is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm not going to drink coffee because if I do, I probably will not be able to sleep. So lift your palms in the air and waving like you just don't care. Thank you, Lord, for this day, for you and me. Wait, thank you for the day that he has made for you and me in a dose tres. Gluggity, gluggity. There's your sippy dippy. But guys, thank you for tuning in to Sip&Awe. Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show. Your conversation really blessed me, and I know for a fact it blessed someone else today. If you haven't already, you can now like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend or a family member so we can keep growing the Sip&Awe family. And if you are tired of your wardrobe, if you're tired of looking like trash, because I see that shirt you're wearing, okay? And you've been wearing that shirt for like 5 years, and you don't want to get new clothes, but bro, you need some clothes. You can now get some Sip&Awe merch. I'll leave the website in the description below because it is time for you to switch it up. Okay, I hope you guys have been enjoying my buddy Charles on the show. He's going to be coming back on Friday and Monday because I kind of want to speed up the process of releasing some episodes because I'm really ahead, and I don't want guests to be having to wait 2 to 3 months to see their episodes. And you can now buy me a cup of coffee. Please do that, and don't forget to listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All right, guys, we will see you on Friday with my buddy Charles Menke. Bye-bye.